One of the most enduring images of the 20th century, an unarmed man standing in the way of the full might of the Chinese army, just off Tiananmen Square. Contrary to popular belief, this actually happened on June the 5th, more than 24 hours after the government crackdown began. He would have seen the brutal suppression of the student protests, and he would have known he'd be lucky to survive. Whether he did or not is unknown. He was dragged away by plainclothes police and never heard from again. And it was in this place, not on the square itself, where many of the fatalities occurred. As the troops moved in from the west of Beijing, ordinary residents stood in their way, trying to protect the students. WENJIAN, an artist, was one such ordinary citizen. In 1989, he was a worker in a chemical factory and had watched the protests unfold and the brutal crackdown that followed, although he says he didn't take part. When he returned to his home a day later, he gave a speech about what he'd seen, despite warnings not to. His punishment was 5 years in jail.
If you are jailed for political reasons in China, the police will monitor you for the rest of your life, and you could be investigated at any time.
Mr. Wu has been removed from Beijing by the police and can't return until the anniversary of the protests has passed. And for these men, the aftermath of Tiananmen goes on, still in jail for offences related to the protests, as are at least 30 others. Why did they suffer more than the activists and student leaders who were released long ago?
The fact that these people were unknown meant that they got less attention from the international community.
And what of the lone protester, now known as the Tank Man?
His offense, if you will, what he did, didn't involve any violence, and therefore probably would not have merited a life sentence or a death sentence. That being said, we certainly can't rule out anything with respect to his fate.
It's unlikely we'll now ever know what happened to the man who stood in front of the tanks exactly 20 years ago today. But he leaves behind him a reminder of one man's bravery in the face of overwhelming odds. Tony Cheng, Al Jazeera, Beijing.